So in this Maamar, it's a little bit easier than the one before. The Rebbe Nishma Satan continues to explain Benegea to Tohu, and he goes into the Noisa, the Inyan of Midas. Since the Midas of Tohu were kosher ke'eres, so he explains Benegea to Midas the taikef that there is in Midas. And he explains that where the Midas get their taikef from. Where do they get their taikef from? So here's where he marks with something very interesting. The Inyan of Midas has, the Lashon of the Maamar is, not just the mushroshim in the nefesh, but they are the hisgalus of hashrosha pshuta shebenefesh. What does that mean? So he explains, the etzem hanefesh is obviously pashut, but nevertheless, when it comes down, the nefesh has a certain tzir is given to the nefesh. He's either a bal chesed or a bal gvuras, different types of nefoshes. And the midas are a galus of this tzir of the etzem hanefesh. As opposed to moichin is not a gili of the tzir of the etzem hanefesh. Moichin is objective, is parav. Therefore, moichin can be swayed this way or that way. You can understand, you can hold a certain shitta, and if you're a bal seichel and somebody comes along and explains to you as another way of looking at it, you will change your mind. So moichin is not rigid; it's not dafka azay. Could be moved. Mashenkin midas, he says a person can never change. That's a bit of a should we say? Says this is the ma'isa. You can't change. If you're be'etzem like this, you can't change. Either the whole avodah of a person is to change. He says no. The person is going to remain the same because this is the hashrosha pshuta of the nefesh. Now we'll get to that in a second when we get to the hashrosha pshuta, but just to skip a little bit to that piece where he says that the nefesh, the avodah of a person is to change, and that he'll never change. But then he says, what's an avodas Hashem? The person has to change. The lashon is over here. If you look on page Tafrit Tzadik Zayin, there's a lashon. He says, the line begins. Let's start from Bnei Yechidoy, the middle of the page. So he says a person can change. Let's say by Avraham, for a moment, for that shah, he changed and he was misgaber, hepech tivay. Then he says that the same thing could be through the avodah. The next line says, "She'etzem teva hamidus," he says, doesn't change. Eina mishtana. Va'afilu al yidei avodah b'keich hanefesh lekis l'shanes midus ativim denefesh b'hamis v'al zehu yidus hanasham beguf v'zoi sikol avodah sa'odam kol mechayev l'shanes ateva denefesh b'hamis is hine gam kasher peil ba'avidos l'shanes l'hapich esateva mikol mokim. Etzim hateva nish eres. It remains the same k'moshe hoya. Rak shekoydim hoysa amida berav alida avodah amida hateva hazois betoiv. Moshe, beforehand he had kas, now his kas has changed to being mitztaya on things which are hepech hatov, which are not kedusha. And Al Derech say he gives other examples. When he says this lashon, that the avodah and the whole yuridus of Hashem is the shanis midas ativim, have a kasha on that? Have a kasha on that? Huh? It says clearly in the Kutei Diburim, the Rebbe brings it down right at the beginning of Kuntas and Yonosh Teres Achsidus, that the Tzemach Tzedek asked the Alter Rebbe, "Was is der Inyan von Chassidus?" Says what Chassidus is, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, he knew obviously. It's a seichel eleki, it's a limud of a lekus, Chassidus. Then he wanted to know, what is their inyan? What is the point? So he says, Kol inyan Chassidus is the shanis teva midosav, to change the nature of the midas. So the Frierdiker Rebbe goes on that sicha in Tzadik Dalet and he says, he doesn't say the shanis midas ativim, And he says it's clear the difference. There's Lashanis Midas Ativim, he says Lashanis Teva Midaisav. And here, what does he say in the Maamar? He says Lashanis Midas Ativim, Val Zehu Yuridis Hanashama Beguf. To change the Midas Ativim. It's over here, no? And it's a glaring question, so therefore, less brera, it seems to me that you're going to have to say that it's not a stira, and that's actually what he means. Because this is exactly what he's explaining. He's saying the whole Yidis Hanashama is Lashanis Midas Hativim, but in the end he says, Michoel Moksem Etzem HaTeva Nisheres K'may Shehoya. You remain the same person. If it's B'teva an angry person, he's going to be angry. Instead of being angry on Gashmistika things, he's going to be angry about how comes people are not doing mitzvahs or something like that. And it's not going to be anger, it's going to be more contained. It's more like he says, mitztaya, not anger. So you see, he says in the end, you're going to stay the same. So you're not going to be Mishana the actual midah. What you're going to do is you're going to Mishana the teva of the midah. The midah is in a certain seal, and you're going to use it instead of for these things, you're going to change to that thing. Therefore, we're going to have to say, although the Rishonos sound like it's a stira, but we're going to have to say that when he says L'shanis Midas Hativim, what he means to say is L'shanis the teva of the Midas Hativim. You see what I mean? Huh?
Isn't there a Lashon Yim about this?
In what?
No, Yim.
That what?
English, I remember something.
On this Lashon L'shanis teva Midas. What's interesting, the Fidiker, when he explains this inyan in what he said in the Sikha, L'shanis teva hamidus, he says it's referring to Sai the midus of the nefesh hasichlis and Sai the midus of the nefesh halakis. He doesn't go into the midus of the nefesh bahamis. The midus nefesh bahamis, he says, if it's a bad midah, it has to be cut off. You have to stop it, whatever it is. The shinu of the teva hamidus is the midus of the nefesh hasichlis and nefesh halakis. There's a whole letter which is printed in Atomim to explain this inyan. I suppose that's why there's no Maamarim over here, because it seems to be something different from here. This is what you're going to have to say. When he says L'shanis Midas Hativim, he doesn't mean what the Friedrich Rebbe is not talking about over there, that you cannot change it. Because he says Taka, you cannot change it. So what does it mean L'shanis? L'shanis the teva of the Midas Hativim. The Midas Hativim, instead of being in Gashmis, it should be in Ruchnis. Okay,
Well, you could say maybe you could say that it's the middays of Nefesh Habayis, which you have to cut off. That's changing them himself in that sense.
That's the beauty.
But he says you're going to end up the same as you were.
But if you're not using a Habayis,
In other words, if it's something bad, you have to cut it off. You have to stop
that's
whatever it is.
changing it itself. In the
No,
sense
but he's talking about actually changing the hanhog of the midah. That's what I think we're going to have to say over here. The Midas Hativim means the Shana, the Teva of the Midas Hativim. Okay, so let's go back to what Midas are. So he says Midas have a strong taikiv because they have these galas of the Hashrosh Pshuta Shebenefesh. Snem Tarum de Gamtza Etzem, and he goes on to explain that. Then in Sif Nation Beis, he really brings up a question. He's explaining why the Midas have this Hashrosh Tivis. He says, because Midas be'etzem, what are Midas? Look at the third line, the first three lines. For Inyan who did in Ismail the ha'hefresh ben rotzen l'chochma, the chochma hu koyach shechutz l'atzmus ha'nefesh, ma she'enkin ha'rotzen hu is galas ha'atzmus. Kein hu b'midas, shebe'etzem uhusam hein ha'rotzen. Rak shezeu k'mo sheba be'bechinas mitzias. Now here's we need a little explanation. He says, be'etzem uhusam, what are midas? Rotzen. So tell me, what's the difference between rotzen and midas? By the way, I asked this question many years ago to Gal Grace and Mashpirim. They didn't have any aces to explain. What is the difference between a midah and a rotzen? You have ava. It says in Chassidus, ava is the oisius ova. He wants. So the pneumius of ava is the rotzen towards something.
What's a tzir, what doesn't?
Huh?
What is a tzir, what doesn't?
What's that?
Midah you can describe in some way. You can describe the person's feeling. You can describe what's going on in his head, in him right now.
And the Ratzon you can't?
Describe it. It's not descriptive. It's not
You want.
It's not colorful.
It's-
It's more partial. You just want. It's less colorful. It's less going on.
My Ratzon could be a very strong Ratzon.
Very strong. It's strength. It's kiffus, but it's not a.
And we're saying that the Midah Bepnimis is Ratzon. That's what he says, Be'etzem Husam ain't a Ratzon.
Yeah, but it comes in a Mitzuyah to Ge'efen.
That
No.
what? That he wants something in particular. Look at the brackets. Okay, let's go further. Fine. Let's go further. Look a few lines down. V'midas hu, the line begins with v'midas. V'midas hu shaboba beginnes mitzias dava. V'midah pratis the chesed gevura. Aval ha-mitzias, hu pshitas ha-atzmos. Shaboba prat zebe beginnes mitzias dava. Now he says, in brackets, he says, v'chein beratzen. K'moi shaboba derech prat beretzoynes pratiyim. Al derech haratzen shebemaisa, hari u betekiv k'moi haratzen ha-poshut. So then we go back to square one. So what's the difference between a Ratzon and a Midah? Michoel mokin b'haratzon gam b'hapratim einay bebechinas mitzias, over Midas heim bebechinas mitzias. What does that mean, bechinas
What it's
mitzias?
about.
What does it mean, bechinas mitzias? Ratzon is, he wants a protestic Ayin. He very much wants...
And then there's what it is.
What?
There's what it's about and what it is. A Ratzon always stays, what it is always stays partial. What it's about can be about a specific thing. It can either be a Ratzon Klali or a Ratzon for this specific thing.
Right.
Drinking Midas are always, the
So?
Midah itself is
Okay.
is
what?
it's about is not what it's for. What it is about, there's something in it. It has its own, Ratzon, what it is about, it always stays partial in what the Eifin, what it is. What it's about can be about something prati.
No.
Midas stays. Midas always is going to be what it's about. Will be Mitzuyah. Will be. I don't mean what it's about. The thing what it's for. I mean it
So
itself.
explain to me the difference in simple language between wanting, let's say, money and having an ava to money. Most common Ratzon that there is I can think of, right? Everybody wants loads of money. Everybody wants to become a millionaire, right? So you have a Ratzon or he has an ava. What? Explain to me the difference.
One is just liking, and one is that he can describe to you what type of liking he is having right now. A descriptive liking.
Is this?
No.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Section and Mata Misechel and Lamela Misechel?
I don't think it makes a difference. It could be L'mayla min ha-seichel.
No.
Maybe a Ratzon prati.
No. I'm saying the Ratzon of Chesed
Yeah.
is a Ratzon that comes from Seichel. Is that?
Im Sheirish the Ratzon is L'mayla min ha-seichel, and he says it is galas ha'atzmos, and he says be'etzem amida is the same thing, because the etzem ahusav amida is Ratzon. So then, if he be'etzem, in other words, it goes like this: Ratzon is L'mayla mi pratim, and this is galas ha'etzem, but it could also go down into pratim and have a Ratzon prati. Amida is a prat, Bechinas Mitzias, he calls it over here, whatever that means. It's a Mitzias. But by Etzem Husam, it's a Ratzon. So he's got prat and he's got Etzem Husam Ratzon. So Hainu-hach, so what's the difference?
They both of them he wants money.
You're speaking with Teich Midas. You're magish the Inyan, but you're not.
Both of them he wants money. One of them he could write a poem about the fact he wants money, and one of them he can't write a poem. That's the difference.
Write a poem?
Yeah.
A poem.
Yeah.
This is
And
a
that
bee
was
I haven't seen anywhere. It could be, and I'm not sure what you're trying to say. I think I know what you're trying to say. Let's go a bit further. I think I know what you're trying to say. Maybe we're on the same lines. Huh?
It's a little bit pashtus. When we say Ratzin is the most primitive Gazan, we're saying the Ratzin for time.
Say again?
When we say that Ratzin is most primitive Gazan, the Ratzin to have time. What exactly that time is going to? What exactly that time is going to be? What exactly is that you want? That's where it's here. But the Ratzin is that you should feel good. That you should have whatever it is that
And a
you
midah?
want. And the midah is mitzuyah de Gazan. Ich will kach bekach, so that I have
But
so that I feel better.
Well, so you're saying along the same lines, and this is all correct. But I'm looking for a hagdara between Ratzon and Midah. I'm looking for a hagdor. Now the only words we have over here is, bemis and what you're saying, is rak shezeu k'mo shebo bebechinas mitzias. So you can write a poem, right? It's bebechinas mitzias. Ma she'ein ken rotzen is not bebechinas mitzias. But that he says before the brackets, and in the brackets he says, but rotzen can also be a prat. So if you have a prat, you can write a poem on the prat, on the rotzen which is in a prat. He says, look at the line begins, pei aleph. He says, Michoel moken ba'rotzen gam ba'hapratim eine bebechinas mitzias. What does that mean? Over midis heim bebechinas mitzias. So even when the rotzen is a rotzen prati, it's not bebechinas mitzias. And the middah is bebechinas mitzias. Well, what does that mean?
I thought it has to do with what's being felt, right? Like a person. Is it just the Isgalus and Nefesh as a Inyan, which I will use the word Yeshus to describe it, even though I don't think it's very accurately bringing out what I'm trying to say. Like in the Ratzon there is no Yeshus and Metzius, it's just the Nefesh itself being Isgale, as opposed to Midas where there is an actual Yesh who loves or fears and so on.
So what does it mean, mitzias? So you're on the vote, because if you look at the very first line of the Perek, he uses based on Mashin Ismaili El Perek Mem Tesa Hevesh Ben Rotzen L'Chochma. What is the difference between Rotzen and Chochma? It's easier when you go to Rotzen to Chochma, it'll be a lot easier to see. What does it mean mitzias and what does it mean not mitzias? Rotzen is Isgalas or Etzem. So it's an inyan of a bitui which is nothing else but his galus of the person himself, the I want, the I evil. So Rotzen has no inyan bifnei atzma, it has no mitzias. You can't take a Rotzen and put it somewhere. I can tell you what my Rotzen is, you can tell me what your Rotzen is. I can even be ma'oira you that you should have the same Rotzen. But your Rotzen is going to be your Rotzen and my Rotzen is going to be my Rotzen, because the Rotzen is mishachas to the Baal HaRotzen. It's not a mitzias. You can't write down a Rotzen. You can write down the seichel of what the Rotzen is, but Rotzen cannot be given over to somebody else. Masha'enkin Chochma can be given over. It's a mitzias. What is Chochma? Sai the Koyach HaChochma and Sai the Haskolas HaChochma is a svara. You can write it down on a piece of paper and give it to somebody else. It could be tomorrow morning. You don't hold of that svara anymore. You hold that's nicht a pshat in Tosfos. But nevertheless, it's already written down. It's a mitzias dover. It's gone over to somebody else.
Well, that's already bigger.
No, Chochma also. Nekudas HaChochma. Chochma is a mitzias of haskola.
But it doesn't have Asius.
Doesn't have Isis. But it doesn't matter. But what is the inyan of Chochma? The Nekudah of Chochma is a mitzias of haskola. It's not a biti of etzem hanefesh. It's not I want. I can take it and separate it from myself. My rotzen I cannot separate from myself, because what does it mean I want without it being me? So you can't have rotzen going anywhere else. Rotzen doesn't go anywhere. Masha'ein kain. Let's al derech moshel in Gashmias. Oyer HaShemesh doesn't go anywhere. It's always going to be Oyer HaShemesh. You can't take it. Well, nowadays maybe with solar energy you can, but before that you couldn't take a box of oil and take it into your room and then open it up and now it's going to be bright in the room. You can't separate the oil from the moil. You can't separate the rotzen from the Baal HaRotzen. Mashenke Chachma you can. Chachma is a haskola, or even the Koyach HaChochma is the same thing. Chachma is a mitzias bifnei atzmai, and it's not a gilui of the moil of the etzem nefesh. It's one of the tools that the nefesh has. It can make Chachma. So therefore, just like Chachma is a mitzias, the Koyach HaChochma is also a mitzias. So when he says that midas are mitzias, that means he's saying midas are going into the sugya of like Chachma. We've moved out from his galus or etzem, and we've gone to mitzias shechutz lanefesh. It's gone down outside of the nefesh. I can take the midah and pass it on. How can you pass the midah on? If you say divrei av or divrei roiges, that hergish will be nichnas into the other person, because it's a mitzias. That means it's a mitzias which is separate. It's not just gilui ha'etzem. The power that's in the midah is be'etzem u'husei is mitzad l'rotzen. Because it's coming from his nefesh, the midah inherits, so to speak, the power of the rotzen of the nefesh. But what is a midah? It's a mitzias dover. Just like haskola, I can write on a paper. Midah I can also write on a paper. I can write divrei av on a paper. So that's what it means by beginnes metzias. That is a metzias kilu chutz lenefesh. How does that answer the difference between rotzen? So what does it practically mean, the rotzen and the tainu? That rotzen is not a metzias. Well, now we've understood what rotzen means. It's not a metzias, and midah means a metzias. But practically, what does that mean? That it's a metzias. Well, practically, what would that mean? The difference. So maybe your poem is a good mashal. What does it mean that you have an ava to something? That means it's already mitzias. That means there's already a connection. I'll put it like this. Rotzen is that you want to have tainug, but you don't have it yet. A midah is there's already mitzias there. In other words, there is already tainug in there. You can't have an ava for something that you never tasted. You can't say, I like this chon if you've never tasted it. After that chon is good. The chon which you know about, mela. But the chon you don't know about, after something else, especially if it doesn't look like a chon. So what are you going to do now? How can you say you like this? Everybody has a tzia because they know that the other things they like, so with pashtus they like this, but something that you don't know what it is, you can't say. What do you tell a child who doesn't eat? He doesn't like it. You say, taste it. Taste it, you'll like it. Put enough sugar, he'll like it. Right? So hastus that there's to say that he likes it, but you could want something which you don't like, the horaya. You have sometimes people who want to learn a lot. They would like the rotzen to learn a lot, but they don't enjoy it. They would like to have a big business, but they don't like to work. They don't like working. They want to sit back and relax. So you can have a rotzen to something, but not have an ava to that thing. An ava means there's already a connection there, and there's a timing. How could there be a connection with the thing? Because it's mechutz lanefesh. It's already gone down to the mitzias that's outside. If you have a connection already with that mitzias, then you can say you have an ava to that mitzias. Masha'inkin rotzen, even if you have a rotzen prati, what is the rotzen? The rotzen is his galas etzem. I want. Okay, you want. And you want an inyan prati. You want an inyan prati. Does that mean you're already connected with the thing? No. It's just a bit, it's an oil from the moil, but it's not miskasha. The oil hashemish is not miskasha with your dining room. It comes through the window because it's mak, but it remains makif. It remains a gili of the moil. It doesn't become something in the dining room. It doesn't become mishachad with the dining room. So therefore, the rotzen, even if it's a rotzen prati, it's not bebechinis mitzias. It's still a bitui of the etzem and has no kesher with the prat that he wants. Make sense? Okay, that was the reparation and base.
And about the Shlosha Pshuta?
Say again?
The Shlosha Pshuta.
Yeah. So that power that the midah has to go with a full takeoff and doesn't give up, where does it have that power from? Because it's mushush in rotzen. Be'etzem husa it's rotzen, and therefore it has the hashrosha, the tzia of the etzem nefesh.
Okay, what does it mean, the Shlosha in the Nefesh? Like, you're saying like this, the Nefesh is higher than Chesed Gvura.
Be'etzem. But when it comes down, it has
When
a
it comes
certain.
down, it
So
gets-
now for us, it's
Yeah.
ki'ilu, it has a tzia.
It gets a Shlosha Pshuta, which is for Kamuvan, not a Tzir, but it's still an Atiyah to Chesed Gvura.
It's a tzia kloli, I think he uses the word.
It wasn't so clear.
He says it's, I think it's tzia kloli. I just don't remember exactly where it is, but somewhere over here he says,
It's page Tafresh Tzadik Vav, probably.
yes, the end of the page, last 3 lines, says, "V'zeh sheshosho b'chesed gvuru ke'en tzia b'nefesh, or k'muvan she'en tzia mamish." In other words, the thing is like this: there's no such thing as anything else besides atzmas and mahus, which is absolute pshitas. So even the etzem nefesh, you're talking about atzmus, or you're talking about an etzem of a nefesh pratis. So it's a nefesh of a ben odom, and it goes through certain channels. It comes down from chesed or from gvura, b'zilu b'shamai. So he has a shtikul tzia.
What does it mean? Like,
That
you're
means
saying it's etzem pashut.
that means no. He's etzem be'etzem. Let's if you talk about the chelik alakam, he's going to be pshitas. But if you're talking about when he comes down as beishamai, and he comes down as beisila. That means be'etzem nafshe. Everything is mitzuya in a certain way. But you can't say that he's mechuyev to be like that. He has bechira that shows on his pshitas. He can change around and
You still can't change.
But his nefesh is always going to be in this tzir. He has a tzir klali. Yeah, that's what he says. He has a tzir klali, and that tzir klali will never change. If his betiva is a kind person, you can't make him into a cruel person. And if his betiva a cruel person, you can't make him into a kind person. B'iskafi, he's able to do that. Why? Because he's not mukhuyev to be like that tzir. But be'etzem, he's always going to remain that type of person. And his midas are attached to him in such a way. The fee, the oifen of that etzem. Baal chesed will be chesedic midas, and the opposite. So that, benegir to us, we're going to say that yes, he has a tziyur. The Rebbe saying here has to bavana that we're not going to say that the etzem mamish is mitzuya, but benegir to eleinu, benegir to the maimah, yes, we're going to say that this is an etzem for midas chesed. This is an neshama for midas chesed. This is an neshama for midas gvura, and you're not going to be able to change that.
And this is not it's misgal and seichel also.
So in seichel, he wants to say that it's misgal and seichel also, but seichel is more power. Seichel is more objective, so therefore he can always change. If you explain to him,
And still the scholar of Bisham and Bishil is not in the way that their Bisham is.
yeah, because that's the way the typhus the inyanim. The svara is going to be the svara of a kind person, of a bal chesed, or the svara of a bal kas. Not a
So
bal
his
kas,
seichel
a
is
bal
Bishul.
rus.
Because his
Wouldn't-
seichel is
wouldn't
bedakim nated to that way.
is
So it's
noted to
Meshuchah.
that way.
So it's Meshuchah.
Yeah, but you notice that it does say achlifu d'chtayu. If you learn at the beginning of it, you know at the beginning of Beis, the right beginning, he talks about achlifu d'chtayu. He explains that Bisham Bishilel, the first time round Bishame gets gvura and Bishilel goes chesed. That's normal. But when they go a second time round, which he calls that ki'ilu, the oil is going out of the keli, for a second time round, then it could be achlifu d'chtayu who is able to see the pshitas of the svara and understand also the opposite. And that's why we have certain times that Bisham is making him as Hillel is Machme. Certain times
So it's
Bisham
not
is.
like Sheikhat.
What's that?
So it's not like Sheikhat.
No, because Sheikhad means he couldn't. Ya'aver. He has no way of seeing the other opinion. Bis Hillel was not Ya'aver. That's the way he sees things. And but the second time round he could see differently, and that's why sometimes he's Machme. And the
But
Pele is.
still, most
Huh?
of the places is going to be.
We're talking about the natural way. Yes, he's going to see things with. Some people see everything in black, black glasses. Everything is black. Everything's wrong. And some people see everything in white. Everything's happy. It's a nature. So he sees that the svara is poshut, and he sees the good side of it, and he sees the strict side
So
of it.
he's mukhrach by someone else to ask in that way.
He's not mukhrach, because, as I said, he can come out the second time and see the other side as well.
And still, he's going to ask in like the.
And that's why it's not seichel. It's not the pshitas of the seichel. It's the seichel the way it's coming into a psak din. Beishama is going to be machmir. He's going to be mekel. But he could change his mind. He could do the opposite if he wants. Of a harai,
But
they
he
did.
doesn't want. Like that's what we
Sometimes
say.
he does.
No, but I'm saying if we say that Bishama is they are gvura and that's why they're passing gvura. So the fact that they could change to chesed doesn't change. When he goes gvura, it's because of his tab,
Okay. What's wrong with
not
that?
because of his avana.
No. We're saying that seichel, he says clearly, a person can understand, and if you explain to him again, differently, he could change his mind. So could Beishama change his mind? He did,
So
many
why
times.
didn't they?
Sometimes he did. We're talking about
But
the first.
where do you put the line between being mukhrach to understand to basket at least one way?
He's not.
So how do you decide that in words?
It's a bit
we
like
make of it?
it's a bit like the moshel that's brought down from Parshas Noach, right? Before the Mabul, the Abishah said, "Yitzalev Adam Ram and Urav, and we're going to get rid of them." Came the Mabul.
Yeah.
Afterwards, Noach brought up the Korban, and he said, "Lo Yosef oy lekal." Same reason. People are born Ram and Urav. So, is this a svara lahachma or lahakil? Depends if you're isgabus achesed or gvura. There's nothing wrong with that. You see things mitzad chesed. Before the Mabul there was gvuras, and after the Korban of Noach it was mitzad chesed. So he saw things differently. So then it became bishilo. So the svara is pashut, and you can schlep it either way. If you want Beis Hillel to be machmir, he's going to have to go back and hear the svara again, and then he's suddenly going to notice.
But the psak is mugbal to the way he takes it naturally.
Usually. Usually, yeah.
So why would it change? Like who?
If he goes a second time to hear. You can't help that. He's been, by nature he's a Baal Chesed, but it comes to sometimes that you can see differently. The only pella that I had is that how comes Punk when Beis Shammai decides to be Michoel, Beis Hillel decides to be Machmir? Did they work it? Did they agree with each other? Did they agree to argue? Huh?
There's a machlekes we didn't hear about.
Oh,
We didn't hear about
that's
machlekes,
the
we heard
teres.
about it
That's
as
the teres. Now I was going to say it's like the Rebbe Rashab. You know, they say the Rebbe Rashab by the very beginning of the Nesias, so people didn't know who to go to. So most people went to the Rebbe Rashab, but some people thought Zalman Aaron is older, they'll go to him. So there's one person, he said, I'm going to go to both. So he goes to the Zalman Aaron, and he gets one answer. He should do this. Went to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab said, no, don't do it. So he went back to the Raza. He said, your brother said I should do it. He says, yeah, mir abgerät, aber mit sagen verkehrt. We agreed to disagree, to Dafka do the opposite. It was agreed beforehand. So I'm saying, so Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, they agreed to disagree always. So when you're going to be Machmir, I'm going to be Michoel. When you're going to be Michoel, I'm going to be Machmir. The vort is, like he said, where they agree that it's not brought down a Machlekes, so you wouldn't know. They could have agreed many times to be Machmir, and they could have agreed many times to be Michoel. You wouldn't know the difference because there was no Machlekes. When there is a Machlekes, those few times when they went opposites, then it was a big deal. We say, Achlifa doch time.
There is a place that says when about the machlekes of Shukach and Pel, I think.
Yeah.
And so that says that it strict chayes even if it's lekula and lechumra, like in the Eidos.
Okay.
So that says this is a chiddush.
Are you saying Keich is more important than Mechul and Chumrah?
Yeah. So that, like usually it goes through. The Rebbe goes through one dogma from which was Seder, and then that is the Rebbe says that chiddush is that it's even lekula and lechumra.
That's interesting because usually I was thinking that the reason why he goes Koyach and Poel is mitzad Chesed and Gvura. Because Gvura is more shaychas to Koyach and Poel is more shaychas to Chesed. Poel Mamish is Amshacha down here, so
I could find it.
yeah. Okay, I see the time's late, but the next Nakud is about the difference between Meichin and when does Meichin Sholet? I mean, it's more or less straightforward. Meichin is Sholet on Midas only when the Midas are bitteldig, but if the midas get out of hand, then it will be nisgala, the hashrosha, the rotzen shibazer, the bleakvul, and then they take over them. That's why when somebody loses his temper, you say, what happened? He lost his temper, which basically means he lost his mind. He lost his mayach shal talarev because the midas took over. Zobatika ochid v'talia. The midas are mushrish in a higher level, and if they take over, then there goes the meichin.